Today we're talking to Martin Checketts from Mills Oakley Lawyers about some of the legal aspects of buying and selling a financial planning business.
When you're looking to buy or sell a financial planning business, a really important first step is to have a good heads of agreement. If you can get things right at the heads of agreement stage, we find that the transaction moves incredibly smoothly because the parties are aligned and have a meeting of minds around the key terms of the transaction. So those terms would include things like price, or the basis on which you calculate the price, restraint of trade obligations, and clawback obligations. One important thing for the parties to consider when they're preparing a heads of agreement is whether that will be a binding heads or a non-binding heads. And certainly my advice as a lawyer would be to make it very, very clear on the face of the document which one it is, binding or non-binding, because there are important legal and tax consequences depending on which way you decide to go. Sometimes buyers and sellers wish to make the heads of agreement binding so that there will be absolutely no doubt on either side that the transaction will proceed. In other words, they're locked in from day one at the heads of agreement stage. That said, there can be some risks with that. Firstly, the heads of agreement by its nature is a very short form document. It doesn't set out all of the full form terms and conditions that we would expect to see in the final binding sale agreement. So certainly there's a risk with having a heads that purports to be binding but doesn't contain sufficient detailed contractual wording. Another important consequence of having a binding heads of agreement is that it's the execution of a binding document that triggers the CGT event for the seller. It's not the date that you finally complete the transaction and receive the money, but the date that you sign a binding agreement. So depending on when you sign and whether or not it's binding, that can certainly create some tax consequences for the seller.